On the day I signed my will, I left nothing to my son, but everything to the maid. At the reading, my daughter-in-law screamed so loud that even the lawyer froze in his seat. Her hands shook as she pointed at me, her eyes wide with rage, as though she had just seen the devil in the flesh. My son sat beside her, stunned, his face pale as a sheet. And there I was, calm, staring at both of them as if I had waited all my life for this very moment. The room went dead silent. Only the ticking of the old wall clock echoed in the lawyer's office. The maid, sweet little Clara, sat quietly in the corner, her hands folded neatly on her lap, her eyes lowered in disbelief. No one expected it. No one. And that was the point. You could cut the tension in the air with a knife. My son's voice finally broke through the silence. "Mother, what have you done?" His words carried more shock than anger, but the anger was coming. I knew it, and I was ready for it. Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. Let me know where you are watching from. You don't know, you might be lucky to get a shout out on our next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel if you like stories like this. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 78 years old, born and raised in the quiet town of Fayetteville, Arkansas. Life has not always been kind to me, but I have lived long enough to learn one truth. Kindness is the only wealth that never fades. It was this truth that shaped my choices. Choices my son, Robert, never understood. Robert was my only child. His father died when he was just 12, and I worked my bones to dust to give him the best life possible. I taught school during the day and cleaned offices at night, just so Robert would never feel the sting of poverty. But somewhere along the line, he lost the values I tried to instill in him. By the time he turned 30, Robert had become everything I feared: proud, greedy, and ungrateful. He married a woman named Jessica, who only fueled those traits in him. She was beautiful, yes, but she had an emptiness in her heart that no money could ever fill. Together, they looked down on me, the same woman who had sacrificed everything for him. But then there was Clara. Sweet, gentle Clara. She came into my life when I was 73. I had just broken my hip in a fall, and I couldn't manage the house anymore. Clara was a young woman from a struggling family, and she took the job as my live-in maid. From the very first day, she treated me with respect, something my own son hadn't done in years. She cooked, cleaned, and made sure I took my medicine, but more than that, she listened. When I talked about the past, she would sit by my rocking chair and listen as if my stories were treasures. Sometimes she would hold my hand when I felt lonely. She even called me Mom once, by accident, and I nearly cried. That moment planted the seed of my decision. But life was not just smooth days of tea and conversations. The lows were as sharp as the highs were sweet. Robert and Jessica would visit once in a while, but never with love. They only came to ask for money. "Mom, I'm starting a new business. I need a loan." Or, "Mom, Jessica and I want to buy a bigger house. Can you help with the down payment?" I helped at first, but I soon realized they never said, "Thank you." They never even tried to pay me back. To them, I was a bank account, not a mother. The worst was one Christmas when they came over. I had spent the whole day cooking: roast turkey, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie, everything I knew Robert loved. But when they arrived, Jessica sneered at the table and said, "This looks basic." My son chuckled. Then, instead of eating, they ordered takeout in front of me. I went to my room that night and cried myself to sleep. Clara, on the other hand, made me feel alive again. She decorated the house for Christmas, helped me bake cookies, and even brought me small gifts she could barely afford. Once she surprised me with a knitted blanket she made herself. That blanket warmed more than my body, it warmed my heart. I knew then that love doesn't always come from blood. Sometimes it comes from the people who choose to be by your side, even when they don't have to. But that choice, the choice to give Clara everything, did not come without storms. Robert grew suspicious of her. He said Clara was using me, that she was manipulating me to steal my wealth. Jessica added fuel to the fire, whispering that Clara was after the house, the land, and everything I owned. Their words hurt me, but I saw through them. I had seen Clara give her last $20 to a homeless man at the bus stop. I had seen her walk miles in the cold to pick up my medicine when the car broke down. I had seen her stay awake all night when I was sick, just to make sure I was okay. That was not manipulation. That was love. But one evening, something happened that changed everything, and it pushed me to make my final decision. It was late, close to midnight. I was already in bed when I heard raised voices in the living room. At first, I thought it was the TV, but when I listened carefully, I realized it was Robert and Jessica. They had come into the house without knocking, without calling. Clara stood in front of them, her small frame shaking, as they shouted at her. I heard Robert's voice thunder, "Stay away from my mother's money, you little thief." I froze in my bed. My heart pounded in my chest. Then Jessica's voice cut through the night, sharp and cruel. "If you think you're getting anything after she's gone, you're out of your mind. We'll make sure you leave with nothing." I could see Clara's shadow trembling in the hall. She tried to defend herself, but Robert pushed her against the wall. I heard her gasp. That was the moment something inside me snapped. And it was that night that sealed the decision that would shock them all. Robert's hand pressed Clara hard against the wall. I heard the thud and the sharp cry that escaped her lips, and in that instant, every muscle in my frail old body tensed. I wanted to jump out of bed, but my hip wouldn't let me. My breath came heavy, and I clutched the blanket as if it could give me strength. "Robert, stop it." Clara's voice cracked, full of fear but not hatred. She never raised her voice, even when cornered. "Don't tell me what to do." Robert snarled, "You're nothing but a maid. Don't think you can come into this house and steal what's mine." His words pierced me like knives. "What's mine?" he said, as if I were already dead. As if I had never mattered, only the things I owned. Jessica's laugh followed, sharp and cold. "Pathetic girl. Do you even know your place? Don't mistake kindness for inheritance. My husband is her son, and that means everything belongs to us." Clara's voice shook but held something steady beneath it. "I've never asked for anything. I only care for her because I love her. She is more of a mother to me than either of you care to see." That sentence, oh, it was like a light cutting through years of darkness. I felt tears sting my eyes. She loved me, not for money, not for the house, for me. And yet my son, my own flesh and blood, pressed her harder against the wall. My hand trembled as I reached for the phone beside my bed. I knew what I had to do. But before I could call the police, Clara twisted away from him. She stumbled back, her cheek red where his hand had grazed her. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood tall, her eyes locked on Robert's. "You should be ashamed," she whispered. "A man raised by such a strong woman, treating her like she's nothing. One day you'll regret this." Her words silenced him for a moment. I could see from the crack in the door that his chest rose and fell with rage, but he didn't strike again. Jessica pulled at his arm, muttering, "Let's just go. She's not worth it." They stormed out, slamming the door so hard that the old frames on the wall rattled. Clara stood frozen, shaking, tears threatening to spill, but she swallowed them back. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Clara," I called softly. Her head snapped up. She hurried into my room, her face pale, her hands trembling. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Collins. I didn't mean for you to hear that. I don't want to cause trouble between you and your family." Trouble. That word. I almost laughed through the tears. "My child, they are the trouble. Not you." She knelt by my bedside, holding my hand gently, the way my son hadn't done in decades. "Please don't be upset. I'll be okay." But I wasn't okay. I wasn't okay at all. In that moment, the decision grew solid in my heart like stone. My son had crossed the line no child should ever cross. He had raised his hand not only against kindness, but against innocence. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Now, before I tell you about that day in his office, let me take you back a little, back to when I first began to see the difference between blood and love. It was a warm summer afternoon in Fayetteville. I had just come back from the hospital after my fall. The pain in my hip was unbearable, and Robert had promised to come help me settle in. He never showed up. Not a call. Not even a message. Days passed and still nothing. But Clara, barely 24 at the time, showed up with flowers and a home-cooked meal. She didn't even know me well yet. She only knew I was old, alone, and in pain. She helped me bathe, brushed my hair, and read me the newspaper when my eyesight failed me. That night, when she tucked me into bed, I whispered, "Why are you so kind to me?" She smiled the gentlest smile. "Because I know what it feels like to be forgotten. I don't ever want you to feel that way." Forgotten. That word stayed with me, because that was exactly what Robert had done, forgotten his own mother. But life has a way of showing us the truth when we least expect it. Months later, Robert finally came by. Not to check on me, not to see how I was healing. He came because he wanted money for a new business deal. "Mom, it's a big opportunity," he said, pacing the living room. "I just need 50,000 to get started. Jessica, and I can pay you back once it takes off." I looked at him, my heart aching. "Robert, I don't even have that much left. And even if I did, why do you never visit just to see me? Why is it always about money?" His jaw tightened. He didn't answer. Instead, Jessica chimed in with a scoff. "We're just trying to build a future. Don't you want your son to succeed? You can't take the money with you when you're gone." Those words cut deep. I thought I had felt pain in my hip. No, this was worse. The sting of knowing that to them, I was already gone. That night, Clara made me soup and sat with me until I fell asleep. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't expect anything. Her kindness was her gift. And that is why, weeks after Robert raised his hand against her, I sat in my lawyer's office and signed the papers. My will was changed. Every cent, every brick of my house, every piece of land, everything went to Clara. The lawyer looked at me with raised brows. "Mrs. Collins, are you certain? This will cause a storm." I smiled through my tears. I have weathered storms before. This one is necessary. But storms, you see, don't always stay outside. Sometimes they break through the roof and tear apart everything inside. Because the very next day, Robert came back to the house and he didn't come alone. The doorbell rang at 9 a.m. sharp. I was still in my robe, sipping on the weak coffee Clara had made for me. She was in the kitchen humming softly, trying to bring some peace into the house after the chaos of the night before. When the bell rang again, harder this time, I knew it wasn't a friendly visit. My stomach sank. Clara looked at me, worry written all over her face. "I'll get it," she said, wiping her hands on a towel. "No, Clara," I whispered. "I already know who it is." Before I could stop her, she opened the door. And there he was, Robert, standing tall with his jaw clenched, and beside him, Jessica, her arms crossed like she owned the place. They didn't even greet us. They just pushed their way inside, filling the house with the heavy stench of anger. "Mother," Robert said sharply, not even meeting my eyes. "We need to talk. Now." Clara stood firm by the door, as though she were guarding me. Robert glared at her. "You, out. This is family business." "She stays," I said firmly, louder than I thought my voice could manage. For a moment, even Robert seemed taken aback. Jessica sneered. "Oh, I see what's happening here. You've let this maid worm her way into your head. She's poisoning you against your own son." My hands trembled, but I forced myself to stay steady. "No one has poisoned me, Jessica. The only thing I see clearly now is who loves me and who doesn't." That struck a nerve. Robert's face turned red. "What do you mean by that?" I hesitated, but then I realized the truth was already too close to be hidden. "I went to see my lawyer yesterday," I said softly. Jessica's eyes widened. "What?" Robert stepped closer, towering over me. "What did you do, Mother?" I kept my voice calm. "I signed my will." Silence. For a moment, it was as though the whole house held its breath. Clara shifted nervously, her eyes darting between us. Jessica broke the silence with a shriek. "You didn't." But I didn't answer. I didn't need to. They could read it in my face. Robert's voice shook with fury. "You left it to her, didn't you?" He jabbed a finger toward Clara. Clara gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "No, I didn't even know." But Jessica cut her off, her voice rising like thunder. "You ungrateful old woman. After everything Robert has done for you, after everything we've sacrificed, you're giving it all to some stranger." Her scream echoed off the walls, sharp and piercing. Even Clara flinched. My heart pounded in my chest, but I refused to let them see fear. I sat taller in my chair, though my body trembled. Everything Robert has done for me? You mean the years of taking and never giving? The disrespect? The greed? Robert slammed his hand on the table, making the coffee cup rattle. She's my mother. Her things should pass to me. That's how it works. That's how it's supposed to be. I met his eyes, and for the first time in my life, I saw not a son, but a stranger. No, Robert. That's not how love works. And love is the only inheritance that matters. Jessica's scream cut through again, louder than before. This isn't over. She grabbed Robert's arm, pulling him toward the door. But before leaving, Robert pointed at Clara with eyes full of hatred. You'll regret this, he hissed. Both of you. The door slammed shut, leaving behind a silence so heavy it felt like a storm had passed. Clara's face was pale. She sank into a chair, her hands shaking. Mrs. Collins, what if they come back? I reached for her hand. They will, my dear. People like them never stop when greed drives them. But I'm not afraid anymore. Still, I was lying to myself. Deep down, I was afraid. Not for me, but for Clara. That night, as the sun went down and the house grew quiet, I sat by my window and prayed. I prayed for strength. I prayed for Clara's safety. And most of all, I prayed that Robert would find his way back to the boy I once knew. The boy who used to run into my arms after school, clutching his drawings, smiling with pride. But prayers don't always stop storms. Because 3 nights later, I woke up to the sound of breaking glass. The sound of shattering glass jolted me upright in bed. My heart raced like a drum in my chest, and for a second, I thought I was dreaming. But then I heard it again. The crunch of footsteps across broken shards in the living room. Clara, I whispered, my voice trembling. Almost instantly, Clara rushed into my room, her eyes wide with panic. Mrs. Collins, stay here. Don't move. She grabbed the heavy lamp from my bedside table, clutching it like a weapon. I wanted to stop her, but before I could, the floorboards creaked outside the door. Then came Robert's voice, low and furious. I know you're awake, Mother. My blood turned cold. He was inside my house. My own son had broken in. The door swung open, and there he was, standing tall with rage in his eyes, shards of glass still glinting on his shoes. Jessica hovered behind him, her face twisted with anger. What are you doing here? I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. Robert's eyes darted to Clara, who stood protectively in front of me, lamp raised. You, he spat, pointing at her. Get out of my mother's house. Clara didn't move. This is her home. You're the one who doesn't belong here. His face twisted in fury. He stepped closer, towering over her, but Clara didn't back down. My heart swelled with fear and pride all at once. Jessica hissed from the doorway. We tried talking. We tried reasoning. But you left us no choice, Margaret. You think you can just erase your own family? Family, I whispered bitterly. Family doesn't break into your house in the middle of the night. Robert's hands curled into fists. For a terrifying moment, I thought he might strike Clara again. I forced my weak body out of bed, clutching my cane. My voice shook, but I raised it as loud as I could. If you lay a hand on her, Robert, I swear I'll call the police and have you locked up like a common criminal. That word, criminal, seemed to cut him deep. He froze, his chest heaving, his eyes darting between me and Clara. Then Jessica snapped, her voice dripping with venom. You old fool. You'll regret this when you're lying in your grave, and that maid of yours is dancing on your money. Clara gasped, her grip tightening on the lamp. How dare you speak to her like that? The air in the room was so thick with tension, it felt like the walls themselves were closing in. Robert finally broke the silence, his voice low and trembling with rage. Fine. If this is how you want it, then don't expect peace. You've made your choice, Mother. And so have I. He turned, dragging Jessica with him. They stormed out, slamming the door so hard that the broken glass on the floor rattled again. Clara locked the door quickly, her hand shaking as she slid the deadbolt into place. Then she turned to me, her face pale. Mrs. Collins, I don't think they're going to stop. They're desperate. They'll do anything. I lowered myself back into bed, my body trembling. She was right. I knew she was right. Robert and Jessica had crossed the line tonight, and there was no turning back. But what Clara didn't know was that I had already taken precautions. I had left a sealed letter with my lawyer, evidence of everything. The threats, the violence, my reasons. If anything ever happened to me, the truth would come out. Still, that night, as Clara sat beside me until I fell asleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that this storm was only just beginning. And I was right, because 2 days later, I received an unexpected letter in the mail, one that would change everything and put Clara directly in danger. The envelope came on a gray Thursday morning. The sky hung heavy with clouds and the air smelled like rain. Clara went to fetch the mail, humming softly as she walked back up the porch steps. But when she handed me the stack of letters, her humming stopped. One of the envelopes was different, no return address, just my name scribbled in messy black ink. The paper was crumpled, as though the person who wrote it had been too angry to hold the pen steady. I felt a chill crawl up my spine before I even opened it. "Do you want me to read it for you, Mrs. Collins?" Clara asked, her brow furrowed. I nodded, my hands too shaky to tear it open myself. Clara slid her finger under the flap and unfolded the paper. Her eyes scanned the words, and almost immediately, her face drained of color. "What is it?" I whispered. Her voice was tight, trembling. "It says, you may think you've won, but this isn't over. You'll regret betraying your own blood. And as for your little maid, she won't be around much longer." The room went still. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat like a drum of dread. Clara looked at me, her lips pressed into a thin line, but her eyes betrayed the fear she was trying so hard to hide. "Robert," I said bitterly, "it has to be." Clara folded the letter quickly, as if hiding the words would somehow erase the threat. "We need to take this to the police." I shook my head slowly. "They'll say it's just a family matter. Words on paper. They won't take it seriously, not until it's too late." She reached for my hand, gripping it tightly. "Then I'll protect you myself." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. She was just a young woman, barely old enough to carry such a heavy burden, yet she was ready to stand against the storm my son and his wife had become. I stared at her, my chest tightening with a mix of love and guilt. This wasn't her fight. She should have been free to live her own life, not dragged into my family's greed and madness. But at the same time, I knew she was the only reason I hadn't already been crushed by loneliness. The day passed slowly, each creak of the floorboards making us jump. Clara kept the doors locked, the curtains drawn, and even checked the windows twice. When the sun finally set, we sat in the living room together, the silence broken only by the ticking clock. Then, just as the shadows deepened, headlights swept across the window. Clara stiffened. "Someone's here." I felt my chest tighten. "It's them." We sat frozen as the car engine cut off. A moment later, footsteps crunched on the gravel driveway. Then came a sharp knock at the door, 3 hard bangs that echoed through the house like gunshots. "Don't answer it," I whispered. But the knocking came again, louder this time. Then a voice. "Mrs. Collins, it's the police. We need to speak with you." Clara looked at me, her eyes wide with confusion. "The police," she whispered. I hesitated, my heart pounding. Were they really police? Or was this another game Robert was playing? Clara crept toward the door, her hand hovering near the lock. "What should we do?" I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could, the voice outside called again, this time sharper, more impatient. "Open the door, ma'am. It's about your son." And in that moment, I knew whatever was about to happen next would change everything. The knock came again, hard, commanding, impossible to ignore. Clara looked at me, her face pale in the dim light. My heart thudded in my chest, each beat like a warning bell. "What if it's not really the police?" she whispered. Her words echoed the thoughts screaming in my mind. Robert was desperate enough to try anything. What if this was another one of his tricks? I steadied my voice, though it shook. "Ask for their badge. Don't open the door yet." Clara nodded, her hand tightening on the knob but not turning it. "Can I see your badge, please?" she called through the wood. For a moment there was silence. My breath caught. Then came a muffled reply. Fayetteville Police Department, ma'am. Officer Daniels. We're investigating an incident involving Robert Collins. Robert's name. The sound of it made my stomach twist. Clara turned to me, her eyes searching mine. I gave her a small nod. Slowly, she unlatched the lock and opened the door just enough to see. A man in uniform stood there, badge in hand, another officer just behind him. Relief washed over me, though not completely. If the police were here, something had gone very wrong. Mrs. Collins? The officer asked, peering past Clara. Yes, I said, my voice faint. I'm Margaret Collins. He stepped inside, his boots crunching lightly on the rug. I'm afraid I have some troubling news. Your son, Robert, he's been taken into custody. Clara gasped. My hands trembled as I gripped my cane tighter. Taken into custody? For what? The officer exchanged a glance with his partner before speaking. Breaking and entering. Vandalism. There's also an ongoing investigation into threats made against you. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. I felt my knees weaken, and I lowered myself into a chair. My own son. My Robert. The boy I once rocked to sleep. The boy I worked 3 jobs to raise, sitting in a jail cell like a common criminal. The officer's voice softened. Ma'am, I need to ask, do you want to press charges? The question pierced me. Part of me wanted to scream, yes. Yes, because of the bruises on Clara's arm. Yes, because of the fear he'd carved into my nights. Yes, because of the letter threatening the only person who had ever truly cared for me. But another part of me, the mother in me, hesitated. Could I really put my own son behind bars? Clara knelt beside me, her eyes pleading. Mrs. Collins, you have to think about your safety. About what's right. I looked at her, my heart torn in two. Kindness and justice battled inside me, and I knew that whichever choice I made would change everything. I turned back to the officer, my lips trembling as I prepared to answer. But before the words could leave my mouth, Jessica stormed through the door. Her hair was wild, her eyes red from crying, or perhaps from rage. She pointed straight at Clara, her voice shrill enough to rattle the windows. This is all your fault, she screamed. You turned his own mother against him. You ruined our lives. The officer stepped forward to hold her back, but her words had already poisoned the air. And as her voice echoed in the house, I realized the storm wasn't over. It was only getting stronger. Jessica thrashed against the officer's grip, her heels scraping the hardwood floor as she tried to lunge at Clara. Her face twisted with fury, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. You think you've won, don't you? She shrieked. You think you can take my husband's birthright? You think you can replace me? Replace us? Clara stepped back, her hands trembling at her sides, but she didn't cower. Her voice was quiet but firm. I never wanted anything that wasn't mine. I only cared for her when you wouldn't. Those words struck like a whip. Jessica's scream grew louder, almost animal-like. Liar! You've been scheming from the start. The officer finally managed to push her toward the door, his partner stepping in to assist. Ma'am, you need to calm down or we'll have to place you under arrest as well. Jessica fought, her hair falling into her face, but her eyes never left Clara. I swear, you'll pay for this. Both of you. Out, the officer barked, shoving her across the threshold. The door slammed shut, muffling her cries, but her threats lingered in the air like poison smoke. The house fell silent, the only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. My chest felt tight, my breath uneven. I reached for Clara's hand, clinging to it like a lifeline. The officer cleared his throat. Mrs. Collins, I strongly advise you to press charges. These two are unstable. If they're not held accountable, they'll keep coming back. I nodded slowly, though the decision felt like it was tearing me apart. Oh, I'll think about it. He left his card on the table, promising to follow up the next day. Then both officers disappeared into the night. The house felt emptier than ever, shadows stretching long across the floor. Clara and I sat together in silence for a long time. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Collins, maybe you should stay somewhere else for a while. Somewhere safe. Her words made sense, but the thought of leaving my home, the place where I raised Robert, the place where I built my life, broke something inside me. No, I whispered. If I leave, they've already won. This is my home. I won't be chased out. Clara squeezed my hand. Then I'll stay. I'm not letting them hurt you again. Her loyalty both warmed and terrified me. She was so young, so brave, but she didn't deserve to be a shield against my own blood. The days that followed were tense. Every knock at the door made us jump. Every creak of the old house set our nerves on edge. Yet Clara kept me smiling, reading to me, cooking my favorite meals, even singing softly when she thought I was asleep. But peace is fragile, and in my life, it never lasted long. One rainy evening, as thunder rolled across the Arkansas sky, I received another letter. This time, it wasn't threats scrawled in anger. It was something far worse. The letter wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to Clara. She unfolded it slowly, her face draining of color as her eyes moved across the page. When she finally looked up, her lips trembled. It says, "You won't live long enough to spend her money." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating her pale face. And in that instant, I knew this was no longer just about me. My decision to protect Clara had painted a target on her back. The words on that letter haunted me like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. You won't live long enough to spend her money. Clara's hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the paper. I snatched it from her trembling fingers and read it again, hoping, praying, that I had misunderstood. But no, every word was written with chilling clarity. The storm outside pounded against the windows, the sound of rain mixing with Clara's uneven breaths. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. I had seen her brave through many things, loneliness, hard work, even Jessica's cruelty. But this letter broke something in her. I pulled her close, my old arms wrapping around her small frame. Don't you worry, child. They won't touch you. Not while I'm alive. But even as I said it, a part of me knew my promise was weak. Robert and Jessica had crossed a line, and I feared what they might do next. The following morning, I called the police again. Officer Daniels, the same man who had taken Jessica away that night, came back. He read the letter, his brow furrowed in anger. This isn't just intimidation anymore, he said. This is a death threat. If you want to press charges, Mrs. Collins, now is the time. I hesitated. Pressing charges meant war, and war with my son was something I had never truly imagined, no matter how far we had drifted apart. But then I looked at Clara, her eyes red from crying all night, and my decision hardened. Yes, I whispered. Do whatever you must. Daniels nodded. We'll file this immediately, and I'll send a patrol car by the neighborhood for the next few weeks. But he glanced at me with heavy eyes. If they're desperate, Mrs. Collins, they might not care about the law. His warning echoed in my mind long after he left. For a while, things seemed quiet. Too quiet. Days passed with no visits, no calls, no letters. Clara began to smile again, even managing to convince me to sit with her on the porch in the evenings, sipping tea as the fireflies danced across the yard. But that peace shattered one night in the cruelest way. It was past midnight when the sound came. A sharp crash, like glass breaking. Clara shot up from the couch where she'd been dozing, and I felt my chest tighten. Stay here, I whispered, though my voice shook. I reached for the small lamp by the armchair, gripping it like a weapon. The sound came again, this time from the kitchen. My heart pounded as I crept down the hall. The house was dark, but the faint glow of moonlight revealed shards of glass scattered across the floor. The back window was smashed, and in the middle of the mess, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A shoe print. Muddy. Fresh. Someone had been inside. Maybe still was. Clara. I hissed. Call the police. She darted for the phone, her hands fumbling as she dialed. And then we heard it. The floorboard creaked. Upstairs. We weren't alone. The creak came again. Slow. Deliberate, like someone was testing each step on the staircase. My blood turned to ice. Clara's voice shook as she whispered into the phone. Please, someone's in the house. Send help now. She clutched the receiver so tightly her knuckles went white. I motioned for her to stay low, my grip still tight around the lamp. My legs were weak, but adrenaline pushed me forward. Every shadow in that house suddenly looked alive. The footsteps upstairs grew heavier, moving from one room to another. Whoever it was, they weren't in a hurry. They were searching for us. Clara's eyes met mine, wide and terrified. She mouthed the words, "What do we do?" I pointed toward the front door, urging her silently to leave. But Clara shook her head stubbornly, refusing to leave me behind. She gripped my arm, as if saying, "We face this together." The next sound was the worst of all, the slow creak of the stairs as the intruder began descending. Each step echoed through the house, louder than the thunder outside. I raised the lamp, my heart slamming in my chest. Clara clung to my sleeve. The phone hung loosely from its cord. The dispatcher's faint voice calling out, "Hello. Ma'am, are you safe? Officers are on the way." But we weren't safe. Not yet. A shadow stretched across the wall. Long human. The figure reached the bottom of the stairs, and in the flicker of moonlight through the broken window, I saw a glimpse of a man's shoe. "Who's there?" I forced out, though my voice cracked. "This is my home. You don't belong here." The figure froze. Silence filled the room, so heavy it pressed against my ears. Then a low laugh broke through the darkness. A laugh I recognized. "Robert." "Mother," he said, stepping into the light, his face twisted, his eyes wild. "You made a big mistake." Clara gasped, pulling me back. But Robert raised a hand, palm out as if mocking peace. "Relax. I didn't come to hurt you, unless you make me. I just came to talk." "Talk." My voice trembled, anger mixing with disbelief. "You break into my home, threaten the girl who saved me, and call this talking?" His eyes darted to Clara, and something cold and dangerous flashed in them. "She doesn't deserve what's mine. None of this does. You're blinded by her fake kindness." Clara stepped forward, her voice steady despite her fear. "Mr. Collins, please. I never wanted to take anything from you. I only cared for her." Robert snapped, his voice sharp as a whip. "Liar. You're the reason she turned against me." Before I could respond, blue and red lights flared outside, cutting through the storm. The wail of sirens filled the air. Robert's eyes widened, panic flashing across his face. He turned toward the broken window, but then stopped and looked back at me. His voice dropped to a chilling whisper. "This isn't over, Mother. If you think tonight scared you, just wait." And with that, he slipped into the darkness, vanishing through the shattered glass just as the police burst through the front door. The officers surrounded us, checking the rooms, but Robert was gone. Still, his words clung to me like chains. "This isn't over." And deep down, I knew he meant it. The storm had passed by the time Robert slipped away into the night, but the chaos he left behind was like a storm inside the house. Glass crunched under the boots of police officers as they swept every corner with flashlights, radios buzzing with sharp voices reporting the break-in. Clara sat trembling on the couch, wrapped in a blanket one of the officers had brought from my bedroom. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the broken window as if Robert might reappear at any moment. I sat across from her, my heart pounding, every nerve in my body raw. My son, my only son, had broken into my home. And worse, he had looked me in the eye and promised it wasn't over. Officer Daniels, his face grim and his uniform damp from the rain, crouched beside me. "Mrs. Collins, he's escalating. First threats, now a home invasion. I can't stress this enough, he's dangerous." I tried to hold myself steady, but my voice cracked. "He's still my boy, officer. I carried him in my arms. I sang him to sleep. How did he turn into this?" Daniels shook his head. "I can't answer that. But what I can do is protect you. We're setting up surveillance, extra patrols, and we'll file this as aggravated burglary. If he shows up again, we won't let him slip through our fingers." Clara spoke up for the first time since Robert fled. Her voice was quiet but firm. He wasn't just after money tonight. He was after fear. He wanted her to know he could get inside whenever he wanted. The weight of her words settled heavily between us. She was right. Robert could have hurt us both, but he didn't, not yet. Instead, he left behind a threat, a promise of worse to come. By the next morning, the house was a mess. The broken window had been boarded up, the kitchen floor swept of glass, but the air was thick with tension. I moved slowly through my routines, trying to pretend it was a normal day. But nothing felt normal anymore. Every sound outside, a car door slamming, a dog barking, sent shivers through me. Clara stayed close, never letting me walk through the house alone. She cooked breakfast, though neither of us ate much. We spoke in hushed voices, as if Robert might hear us even from miles away. Later that afternoon, the lawyer, Mr. Green, stopped by unexpectedly. He was a tall, thin man with a sharp nose and a briefcase that always seemed too heavy for him. He looked troubled as he sat down in the living room. "Mrs. Collins," he began cautiously, "word is spreading about the will. Robert and Jessica aren't taking it quietly. I've received 3 calls from their attorney demanding revisions. They're threatening to contest everything in court." I closed my eyes, exhaustion pressing on me. Let them. I made my choice. Clara was here when no one else was. She deserves it. Clara looked startled, almost embarrassed, but I squeezed her hand. "Don't you look away, dear. You gave me life when others were waiting for me to die. That means more than blood." Mr. Green cleared his throat. "I respect your wishes, but you need to be prepared. A legal battle could get messy. They'll dig into your past, into Clara's life. Anything they can use to discredit this arrangement." Clara flinched, but she held her chin high. "They can say whatever they want. I have nothing to hide." I admired her strength, but deep down, I feared what Robert and Jessica were capable of. They had already crossed lines I never thought possible. Dragging Clara's name through the mud in public court would be nothing to them. That evening, after Mr. Green left, Clara and I sat by the fireplace. The flames cast long shadows across the room, and I found myself staring into the fire, my mind drifting back years. I remembered Robert as a boy, running across the yard with his arms spread like wings. I remembered Jessica on the day they married, her smile sweet and practiced. Where had all that gone? How had we arrived at this point, where my son looked at me like an enemy? "Do you ever regret it?" Clara asked softly. "Regret what?" I turned to her, leaving everything to me. "If you change your mind now, maybe Robert would stop." I reached for her hand, my old fingers wrapping around hers. "Child, I don't regret a thing. My will wasn't just about money. It was a message that kindness matters, that loyalty matters. Robert abandoned me when I needed him most. You stayed. If that makes you the target of their anger, then so be it. But I won't rewrite the truth to make them happy." Clara's eyes glistened, but she nodded. For a brief moment, I felt a small peace. But it didn't last. The phone rang suddenly, slicing through the quiet room. Clara jumped, her hand flying to her chest. I answered with trembling fingers. "Mrs. Collins?" The voice on the other end was deep, rough, and unfamiliar. "Yes," I whispered. "You'd better change that will back. Or next time, it won't be a window we break. It'll be her neck." The line went dead. The receiver slipped from my hand, crashing to the floor. Clara rushed over, panic on her face. "Who was it? What did they say?" I stared at her, my throat dry, my heart pounding. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was war. The phone still lay on the floor, its cord twisting like a snake across the rug. I stared at it, the words echoing in my head over and over. "It won't be a window we break. It'll be her neck." Clara knelt beside me, her hands clutching my shoulders. "Mrs. Collins, please tell me. Who was it? What did they say?" My lips trembled. "They threatened you, child. They said you won't survive this if I don't change the will." Her face drained of color. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then, slowly, she sat back on her heels, her eyes fixed on the firelight flickering in the hearth. "So it's come to this," she whispered. "I wanted to protect her from it all. I wanted to tell her it was nothing but empty threats, that Robert and Jessica wouldn't dare hurt her. But after the break-in, after the letter, after that voice on the phone, I couldn't lie to her anymore. I reached for her hand. "Clara, you don't have to stay. I can arrange for you to leave Arkansas. Maybe go up north. Somewhere safe." Her eyes snapped to mine, fierce despite the tears gathering at the corners. "No, don't you dare say that. You think I'd run and leave you here alone?" After everything? No, Mrs. Collins. I'd rather face them than abandon you. Her words were steady, but her hands shook. She was brave, yes, but she was also young, too young to be dragged into my family's poison. That night, neither of us slept. Every creak of the old house, every gust of wind against the boarded window made us jump. I sat upright in my chair, the phone clutched in my lap, as though holding it would somehow give me power over the next call. Clara dozed off against the armrest, her head heavy on a cushion. But even in sleep she looked uneasy, her body tensed as if ready to run. By morning, exhaustion weighed heavy on both of us. I brewed coffee, the bitter scent filling the kitchen, but my hands trembled so badly I spilled half the cup. Clara cleaned it up without a word, her silence speaking louder than anything. When Officer Daniels arrived later that day, I showed him the phone log. He listened, his jaw tightening as I repeated the threat word for word. This isn't just intimidation anymore, he said grimly. This is attempted extortion with a death threat attached. We'll put in for a wiretap and trace if the calls continue. And Mrs. Collins, he looked me dead in the eye. You need to consider protective custody. Both of you. The idea chilled me. Leaving my home under police protection? Hiding like a criminal when I had done nothing wrong. I shook my head firmly. No, I won't be chased out of the house I built. Daniels sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Then at least let us install cameras and alarms. If he tries again, we'll have proof. I agreed reluctantly, and by that evening, 2 technicians were wiring the house with blinking red lights and motion sensors. Clara hovered nearby, watching with anxious eyes, as if she didn't trust the walls to keep us safe anymore. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Robert didn't show. Jessica didn't appear. No letters. No calls. For a brief moment, I almost believed the worst had passed. But quiet is often the mask of something darker. One afternoon, Clara suggested we drive into town just to feel normal again. I hadn't stepped outside my property in weeks, and the idea of breathing air that wasn't filled with fear tempted me. So we drove. The streets of Little Rock bustled with life, children laughing in parks, couples sipping coffee outside cafes. For the first time in weeks, I felt like part of the world again. We stopped by the grocery store, and Clara hummed as she picked fresh vegetables, trying to lighten the mood. I watched her, her simple joy reminding me of what kindness looks like when it isn't tangled with greed. For a fleeting moment, I felt proud that my choice in the will had honored the right person. But then, as we walked back to the car, I saw it. A black sedan, parked too close, engine running, windows tinted. My stomach dropped. Clara didn't notice at first. She was busy loading the bags into the trunk. But when I grabbed her arm, my fingers digging into her sleeve, she followed my gaze. The passenger window rolled down slowly, and there he was, Robert, his eyes locked on mine, cold, calculating. He didn't shout. He didn't move. He just sat there, his face pale, his lips curled into the faintest smile. Then, just as slowly, the window rolled back up. The sedan pulled away, slipping into traffic like a predator melting back into the forest. Clara stood frozen, the grocery bag still dangling from her hands. He's watching us, she whispered. Yes, I said, my voice shaking. And he wants us to know it. That night, the fear returned with full force. Clara triple-checked every lock. I sat by the window, my cane across my lap like a weapon, staring into the shadows. The cameras blinked red, but what good were blinking lights against a son who knew me better than anyone else? At midnight, the phone rang again. Clara startled, nearly spilling her tea. I answered, my throat tight. The same rough voice rasped through the receiver. Last chance. Change the will. Or next time, she doesn't wake up. My hand shook, but I forced my words out, sharp and loud. You coward. You think threats make you a man? You'll never scare me into betraying the truth. Never. The line went dead. Clara rushed to me, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mrs. Collins, please. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the will. I just want you safe. Change it. For me. Her plea pierced my heart. But even through my fear, I shook my head. No, child. That's what they want, to break us. If I give in now, they'll own everything, my home, my memory, even my dignity. and I won't let them take that from me. But deep inside, I wondered if my stubbornness was dooming us both. The next morning, Officer Daniels arrived again, this time with 2 deputies. They set up a trace on the phone and promised to park a patrol car nearby. Clara looked relieved, but I could see in her eyes she didn't trust the badge to protect us. Not fully. Neither did I. Because that night, something far worse than a phone call shattered the fragile calm. It started with smoke. Clara was the first to smell it, sharp, bitter, snaking through the hall. She shook me awake, panic in her voice. "Mrs. Collins." "Fire." I bolted upright, coughing as black smoke poured under the door. Somewhere downstairs, glass shattered. A crash, then another. The unmistakable roar of flames. Someone had set the house ablaze. The first thing I felt was heat. Searing, suffocating heat that wrapped itself around me like a predator's grip. Clara's frantic voice pierced through the haze. "Mrs. Collins, wake up, please." I stumbled to my feet, my throat burning as smoke thickened the air. The crackle of fire roared downstairs, the sound growing louder by the second. Through the dark haze, Clara's wide eyes shone with terror, but her grip on my arm was strong and steady. We rushed toward the door, but the hallway was already swallowed in flames. The wallpaper curled and blackened, with beams groaning as fire licked at the walls. Clara coughed violently, pulling me back. "We can't go that way." Panic surged. The only other escape was through the bedroom window. But we were on the second floor. I hobbled toward it, my cane clattering uselessly against the floor. Clara shoved the window open, letting in a blast of cool night air. "Climb down the trellis," she shouted over the roar of flames. I stared at the fragile wooden frame that clung to the side of the house. My legs were weak, my body frail. One wrong step, and I'd crash to the ground. "I can't, Clara, I'll never make it." She gripped my shoulders, her face fierce despite the soot streaking her cheeks. "You're not dying in here. Not like this. Trust me." With surprising strength, she swung my arm over her shoulders and guided me onto the window ledge. Below, the firelight glowed, painting the yard in flickering orange. My heart pounded as Clara climbed out first, balancing carefully on the trellis. She looked up, stretching out her arms. "Come on. Hold on to me, I've got you." I lowered myself, my hands clutching the wood until my fingers ached. The trellis creaked under my weight, the smell of burning wood thick in my nose. Clara climbed just below me, guiding my feet, urging me to take one more step. Then, with a deafening crack, the trellis snapped. I screamed as I tumbled, the ground rushing up. Clara grabbed for me, but the broken wood gave way. I landed hard on the grass, the breath knocked from my chest. Pain shot through my side, but I was alive. Clara landed beside me moments later, rolling onto her knees, coughing violently. We scrambled across the lawn as flames tore through the windows above, the roof groaning before collapsing inward with a shower of sparks. My home, my memories, my life was devoured before my eyes. Sirens wailed in the distance, drawing closer. Neighbors shouted from across the street, their silhouettes blurred by smoke. Clara gripped my hand, her body shaking. "We made it," she whispered. "We're alive." But I wasn't thinking of survival. I was thinking of Robert. He had done this. He wanted me dead. No, worse, he wanted Clara dead. So I would live with the torment of losing her. When the fire trucks arrived, the night erupted with activity. Firefighters doused the flames. Paramedics checked us over. My ribs ached. My hair was singed, but I refused treatment. I sat on the curb, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the smoldering ruins. Officer Daniels arrived, his face grim as he took in the wreckage. "Mrs. Collins, Clara will investigate. But I think we both know who's behind this." I met his eyes, my voice hoarse. "My son did this. My own blood tried to burn me alive." Daniels crouched in front of me, his expression heavy. "Then it's time we stop protecting him with words. I need you to testify, Mrs. Collins. File full charges. Otherwise, he'll keep coming until he succeeds." Clara squeezed my hand, nodding fiercely. "Do it. Please." And for the first time, I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said. "I'll testify. I'll do whatever it takes." The weeks that followed were a blur of courtrooms and headlines. The fire had made the news across Arkansas. Wealthy widow's son accused of arson in inheritance battle. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps, their cameras flashing, their microphones thrust forward. Robert was arrested within days. Witnesses saw the black sedan near my street that night. Traces of gasoline were found on his clothes. He denied everything, of course, his lawyer painting him as the heartbroken son betrayed by his mother's favoritism. But the evidence was clear. And when the jury saw the photographs of my burned house, when they heard the recordings from the wiretap capturing the threatening phone calls, their faces hardened. Jessica sat in the courtroom every day, her face a mask of fury. She glared at Clara, her eyes burning with hate, but she said nothing. Not until the verdict. When the judge declared Robert guilty of attempted murder, Jessica exploded. She leapt from her seat, screaming, "You witch! You ruined everything. You'll regret this. Clara, you'll regret it." Bailiffs restrained her, dragging her out as her shrieks echoed through the hall. Clara stood tall, her chin high, but I felt her trembling hand clutching mine. Months passed. Robert was sentenced to prison, Jessica barred from contacting me again. I was given a small apartment downtown, though it never felt like home. My house was gone, but I carried the memories in my heart. One afternoon, Clara and I sat by the window, sunlight streaming across the floor. She poured tea into delicate cups, her movements calm and steady. "You lost so much," she said quietly. "Your home, your son, because of me." I reached across the table, taking her hand firmly. "Don't you dare say that. I didn't lose my son because of you. I lost him because of who he chose to become. But I gained something far more precious." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" I smiled, tears glistening in my eyes. "I gained a daughter." Her lips parted, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled, a soft, genuine smile that lit her whole face. And in that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. My will wasn't just about money. It was a message, a legacy, a lesson that kindness, loyalty, and love matter more than blood or wealth. The world could burn around us, but Clara and I had survived. Together. And though the scars of fire and betrayal would never fully fade, neither would the bond we had forged. Because in the end, revenge wasn't what defined my story. It was love.